My mother was seriously ill and faced the concern of huge medical expenses. Unexpectedly, she awakened the Zero system and played the Krypton Gold Divine Trench in the survival game. An island with hidden murders. Mysterious disappearing oasis. An incurable disease without medicine. A village isolated from the world, bounded with the concern of the Zero system, in addition to worrying about how to survive various natural and man-made disasters every day. We also have to worry about what to do to complete the side tasks released by the system and spend money. Later, she met Lin Chen. When money ability encounters superpower, they complete the most dangerous tasks together and receive the richest rewards. Host, please note that the Yongjia Tongxin ring you are purchasing requires a cost of 1 billion cash. Gu Nian's face remained unchanged. Bye. In the world of survival, love is not easy. Why not set a small goal and spend 10 billion first? Keywords of the novel. Making a divine trench in survival games with no pop-ups, downloading the complete text of Making a Divine Trench in survival games, and reading the latest chapters of Making a Divine Trench in survival games. Chapter 1. Sunlight Island 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Sunlight Island 1. If I can pass the survival test, can I really get enough money for my mother's treatment? Yes. If the game succeeds, you will safely return to the real world and receive generous rewards. If the game fails, you will die directly in the game, and your existence in reality will also be erased. Gu Nian grabbed the pendant left for him before his father's disappearance, and his gaze changed from confusion to firmness. Mom, wait for me. I will definitely save you. So let's start. We are about to start the survival trial. The Zero system is binding. Teleportation is starting. Waves of pain came from her chest, as if something had integrated into her body. The memory has not been adjusted from the discomfort of heartache, and I feel a heat wave sweeping through. The heavy and stuffy feeling seemed to thicken the surrounding air. The blue sea was shrouded in thick dark clouds. Ships are swaying in the water. The dock ahead is constantly approaching. Her current location is a cruise ship that is about to dock. You have entered the first round of the game, Sunlight Island. The system space has been bound. Now we will start publishing system tasks. Main task. Please strive to survive in the game for 30 days. Side task. The system will randomly publish based on the host's environment and conditions. Wishing you a pleasant experience. At the moment when the sound of the system stopped, Gu Nian heard another very enthusiastic voice. Dear tourists, welcome to the beautiful Sunlight Island. The cruise ship is about to dock, please pay attention to safety. Amidst the probing gaze of other passengers, Gu Nian calmly took off his windbreaker jacket and joined the queue to disembark. The moment she stepped on Sunlight Island, next, we will release side task 1. Please spend 10,000 yuan within 1 hour. After completing the side task, the host will receive the items purchased with the task funds and receive corresponding monetary rewards after completing the game. Please note that the value of money and items must be equal and cannot be donated or discarded. Gu Nian raised an eyebrow. That is to say, as long as she completes side quests, spends money in survival games, and works hard to clear levels and leave the game, can she receive enough money to pay for her mother's medical expenses. She bought the latest version of the map of Sunlight Island and a travel manual from a port vendor, and took a taxi waiting for business on the roadside. Hello, please take me to Sunlight Square. Are you a tourist? Gu Nian hooked his lips towards the driver and said, have you ever seen a tourist without luggage? For safety reasons, she paused for a moment and added, please take the coastal road instead of taking the roundabout. The driver curled his lips and put away his thoughts of taking a detour to overcharge customers. Even the roads have been well planned, either locals or prepared tourists. Gu Nian sat on the back seat of the taxi, in a position that the driver couldn't see, looking at the map spread out on his lap. From the map, Nico Island is a duck egg-shaped island. This is a tropical region with beautiful scenery, rich in various seafood and tropical fruits, and receives hundreds of thousands of tourists every year. Islands, survival games connect the only two key information she has at present, and the possible crises are tsunami, earthquake, heavy rainstorm, and man-made disasters. Sunlight Square is located at the center of Sunlight Island, about a 20-minute drive from the seaside. The reason why I chose this place is because it is not only a commercial area, but also the highest elevation area of the entire Sunlight Island. Living and activities here can at least avoid encountering danger in the first instance of a tsunami. After safely arriving at Sunlight Square at the fastest speed, more than half of the mission time has passed. Seeing that the task was about to end in just over 10 minutes, Gunyen hurriedly. The new book finally meets everyone. Don't forget to bookmark survival games if you like them. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Sunlight Island 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Sunlight Island 2. Gunyen quickly ran into a high-rise hotel not far away, grabbed the tail of the task time, and booked himself a VIP suite for $1,000 a day. Congratulations to the host for completing Branch Task 1. Now we will release Branch Task 2. Please spend 30,000 yuan within 3 hours. Just finished Task 1 in a race against time. Concern. Okay. Isn't it just spending money? Believe in yourself, I can. She first found a clothing store and changed into a light, breathable, and easy-to-move summer outfit, making herself less disharmonious compared to the others around her. She casually purchased a few sets of summer clothes, then her gaze turned and she walked towards a neglected corner. Seeing a customer walking towards him, the salesperson who was originally dozing off against the counter suddenly came to his senses. Hello, may I ask if you want to purchase cool season clothing? In tropical regions, there are only 2 seasons. The rainy season and the dry season. Because the dry season has slightly lower temperatures, it is also known as the cool season here. During the rainy season with a daily average temperature between 38 and 45 degrees Celsius, it was a surprising surprise for the salesperson who had no hope of receiving commissions this month when someone came to see dry season clothing. Is there any thicker clothing than these? Gunyen frowned and asked. Once extreme weather events such as storms and tsunamis occur, temperatures are likely to drop. At that time, items that can be used for warmth will definitely become priceless scarce resources on this tropical island. The salesperson was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and said, "Are you from out of town?" She spoke confidently, "Don't worry, even during the cool season, the average temperature on the island remains above 30 degrees Celsius. And the dry season won't arrive until 4 months later. Using these clothes to keep warm is definitely enough." Really? So. Do you have a thick blanket or blanket? Finally, Gunyen only bought a few hoodies and pants, as well as 2 pairs of autumn pants. With a slight frown, he looked at the shopping guide and found an outdoor goods specialty store. She ignored a male salesperson who was pushing her for surfboards and purchased a compass, binoculars, solid fuel, solar emergency lights, sun hats, assault suits, hiking shoes, backpacks, jungle raincoats, waterproof high boots, waterproof tents, bright flashlights, butterfly-shaped flint, multifunctional survival axes, foldable engineering shovels, sleeping bags, and 2 camouflage outdoor blankets. Considering the possibility of a tsunami, she spent 2,000 yuan to buy a self-inflating lifeboat. Although she doesn't know if these items will come in handy at the moment, the phrase, "be prepared," is definitely true. Besides, her system number 0 gave her the capital to make a living in the game. Leaving the hotel address and having all the items delivered to the hotel room, she began the next round of procurement. Target, supermarket. Purchase 3 boxes of mineral water to ensure sufficient daily drinking water. Pineapple, mango, papaya, passion fruit, and coconut can be used as water to drink. 2 boxes of instant noodles, 1 box of packaged cake, self-serving pot, stored as emergency food. Local specialties such as dried shrimp, dried squid, and fish sausages can be used to supplement protein and improve physical fitness. Of course, in order to complete the task, all items must be purchased at the most expensive. She pushed 2 full shopping carts to the checkout area and saw an elder brother and a cashier sister arguing. "Can't you give a discount?" Gu Nian stretched his neck and looked ahead, only to find that the items purchased by the man were all mineral water and instant noodles. This person is probably also a survivor who has entered the survival game. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Sunlight Island 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Sunlight Island 3 Sir, I'm sorry, 50 yuan can only buy 1 box of instant noodles and 1 box of mineral water. The cashier smiled and said, while taking half of the items from the man's shopping cart. The man looked frightened and said, "No. Please don't treat me like this. I don't have money to recharge anymore. I just want to live, I just want to live." Gu Nian was taken aback. A suspected survival game player said that without money to recharge, one cannot survive this. Doesn't it mean that you need to recharge Krypton in the survival game? But why can her survival system provide funding for her to earn money in the game? She spends money on the system and can also receive rewards of relevant amounts. I always feel that her survival system is not the same as other survival systems. Zero, who shares her feelings, let out a proud and coquettish snort. Does she think that all survival systems are zero? Gu Nian looked around thoughtfully and found that there were several people in the shopping cart filled with instant noodles, mineral water, bread, biscuits, and other foods. I vaguely sensed the concern that my survival system might be different from others, and suddenly became alert. Although she is cute and new, she also knows the principle of not revealing wealth. So she decisively took out her newly purchased phone and called the hotel, spending 200 yuan to hire a car from the hotel to pick her up at the supermarket. Having a car is much safer when carrying a large amount of supplies. Thinking in my heart, it is necessary to learn a driver's license after leaving this round of games. Perhaps it is because I have become accustomed to the lifestyle of saving money to save for my mother's medical expenses. Although Gu Nian has been working hard to spend money, however, there is still half an hour left until the 3-hour task time specified by the system, and there is still over 10,000 yuan left in funds. Gu Nian sat in the hotel car to pick him up, calmly dialed the ordering phone number of the restaurant ranked first on the travel manual's dining list, and used the remaining money to book a luxurious seafood feast for himself, asking them to deliver it to the hotel. Looking at the tender and juicy roasted oysters, the local specialty of white roasted snails, the tempting red emperor crabs, and the fragrant charcoal grilled lobsters, Gu Nian took a deep breath and sat down to eat while turning on the TV. Watching TV is an effective way to safely obtain information while fully protecting oneself. As she pressed the remote control, she asked the system, "Zero, what would happen if I didn't complete the branch task within the time limit set by the system?" Rest assured, the system will not threaten your personal safety and will only double the amount you need to spend. Gu Nian. Think carefully and be extremely afraid. If it's a doubling of 350,000 to 350,000, that's okay. If she had to spend millions, tens of millions, in a few hours, then we can only buy luxury homes and cars. Zero indicates. Little sister, the pattern needs to be opened up. It is not impossible to take on a large order worth billions of yuan in the future. At this moment, the sound coming from the TV caught Gu Nian's attention. The female host wearing a professional suit displayed her thermometer under the camera. Everyone, please take a look. After actual testing, the outdoor temperature on Sunlight Island has reached as high as 48 degrees Celsius. Let's randomly interview a few passers-by and listen to their opinions on the ongoing high temperatures on the island. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Sunlight Island 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Sunlight Island. For the camera caught an old man holding a sun hat and fanning, still sweating profusely. It's really hot lately. If the temperature continues to rise, there might be a fever. The old man said while wiping his sweat. Everyone must be careful when walking, as falling on the road can easily cause burns. A young man next to him leaned in front of the camera and said with a playful smile, if anyone says to you, go wherever you want to cool down in this ghostly weather, it's definitely for your own good. The camera turns again, and an uncle from the Mediterranean distribution is sitting in the studio accepting an interview. Professor Lee, what is your opinion on the current phenomenon of continuous temperature rise? Professor Lee began shaking his head and head to talk about the impact of monsoons, ocean currents, solar activity, and other factors on temperature. Looking at Professor Lee speaking confidently, he felt lost in thought. Can we say this survival crisis is actually high temperatures? Zero, I remember. As you mentioned before, I bound the system space. What does this space look like? What items can it store? If food is placed in the space, will it spoil? If ice is stored in the space, will the ice melt? Guided by Zero, I carefully checked the system space. That is a small room divided into 8 different storage spaces. She put her hoarded items into the space, occupying a small portion of the entire space. In order to avoid the hottest time of the day, she decided to take a shower and then take a nap. After entering the bathroom, she realized that the pendant she had been hanging around her neck before her father went missing, which looked like an Arabic numeral 0, had disappeared, leaving only an empty red rope around her neck. Strangely, her heart has a tattoo exactly like the pendant. Gu Nian suddenly thought of the pain that came from my heart when I entered the survival game and bound the system. Perhaps the pendant has already integrated into her body. What is the zero-shaped pendant left by her father? Where did her missing father go again? She pressed her temples with a tired expression. Before binding Zero and entering the survival game, she was just an ordinary junior student. At present, she can only take one step at a time and gather enough medical expenses for her mother before proceeding. After 4 p.m., she hired a ride-hailing car and went to the largest nearby pharmacy to purchase some conventional and hemostatic drugs, anti-inflammatory drugs, waterproof stickers, triangular scarves, gauze, bandages, masks, protective glasses, and 2 first aid kits. Just as she was thinking about whether to purchase other items, a hurried voice suddenly came from behind. Hello. Do you still have any heatstroke prevention and cooling drugs here? The speaker was a girl with a bun-shaped head, her beautiful big eyes filled with anticipation as she looked at the salesperson at the pharmacy. I'm sorry. All the heatstroke prevention and cooling drugs in pharmacies were sold out 3 days ago. 3 days ago. All of them were sold out. Gu Nian frowned. Zero, is the time for all surviving players to enter the game consistent? The mechanical voice of Zero contained a hint of laughter. Yes, host. He is really a smart child. The medicines for heatstroke prevention and cooling were already out of stock before all players entered the game. This indicates that the survival crisis this time is not related to high temperatures. Survival games cannot leave players with even a glimmer of vitality. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Sunlight Island 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Sunlight Island 5. The girl who couldn't buy heatstroke medicine turned pale and said, How? How could this be? Gu Nian withdrew his gaze and was about to leave the pharmacy to take a look at other supplies. However, he saw that the lost girl had just collided head-on with a pharmacy tallyman pulling goods. The two of them collided with a nearby medicine cabinet, causing a ball to roll and a truck of goods to spill all over the ground. Several bottles of liquid medicine in glass bottles were shattered, and various liquids flowed on the floor, staining scattered items, leaving the scene in a mess. Ah, this. The girl with a bun-shaped head suddenly jumped up from the ground. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Leave this sentence, she has already rushed out of the door and ran away. The speed is as fast as a gust of wind. The pharmacy manager gritted his teeth and angrily cursed at the lying tallyman with a pale face. How do you do things? You can even walk and bump into people. What should we do about the losses in the store now? There aren't many drugs you've broken, and there shouldn't be a big problem with the taste of compensation. The problem is these protective clothing. You should know that these things are specially disinfected, and even if the outer packaging of the product is contaminated, customers will be picky. These special protective suits are priced at 200 yuan per set. If you knock over 50 sets, the value is 10,000 yuan. In addition to the medicine you broke, you need to compensate the store for the loss of at least 1,500 yuan. The tallyman is a gentle older sister. This incident left her completely bewildered. It wasn't my fault. I just came here to work for a week, and my elderly family is not in good health. I really can't afford to pay for it. Gu Nianzheng looked sympathetically at the tallyman and didn't expect the system to suddenly release a side task. Side task 3. Buy all protective clothing contaminated with medicine. I didn't expect my zero to have such positive energy, a zero that can provide charcoal in the snow. Number 0 indicates that the host miss of this year is so well behaved. As a mature host, she has learned to search for projects that consume money on her own. Since Miss has been working so hard, as a system, it still has to give Miss a wealthy flower as a sign of its strong support for her. Wait a moment. Don't embarrass this lady. I have bought these protective suits. Just help me clean the outer packaging, Gu Nian said hastily. The tallyman and the pharmacy staff were both stunned. Seeing Gu Nian walking towards the cashier with a calm expression and holding a card, they finally realized. What are you still doing in a daze? Hurry up and clean up the things for the customers, pack them properly, the store manager said to the tallyman. The salespeople began to get busy and quickly sorted out the protective suits, fearing that they might regret them. It wasn't until Gu Nian walked out of the pharmacy with what she had bought that they breathed a sigh of relief. The tallyman reacted from her daze and chased after the door, saying, "Little girl, thank you." No need to thank you. Gu Nian said something and ran away with 2 large bags of things, but the speed was not slower than the girl who ran away after hitting someone before. Spending the money of the system to do good deeds and helping others, and being thanked by others, she really doesn't deserve it. It took me a whole day to collect all the materials I can think of so far, and I stayed safely in the hotel room for 4 days. Of course, during these 4 days, she was not completely idle either. She has been learning simple combat skills and the usage of survival tools such as butterfly-shaped flint, multifunctional survival axe, and folding engineer shovel through online videos. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Sunlight Island 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Sunlight Island 6 To forge iron, one needs to be hard on their own. In order to successfully complete the game, improving one's own strength is the key. 0. Apart from occasionally posting side quests near mealtime, allows the host to eat, drink, and spend a lot of money, and does not interfere with other activities. A new day has begun again. Gu Nian stretched lazily and walked to the window to open the curtains. The weather outside is still heavy, sticky, and stuffy. The entire sky is shrouded in thick dark clouds, giving people a feeling of black clouds pressing down on the city and wanting to destroy it. I don't know when a torrential rain will fall from the sky. Looking at the sky covered in dark clouds, there was a faint feeling in my heart. Perhaps the future heavy rain will change the entire process of survival games. At noon, Gu Nian had just picked up a plump leg of an emperor crab dipped in a special sauce and brought it to his lips when he suddenly smelled a foul odor. What's going on? Is the seafood bad? She tried to observe, smell, and taste every kind of food, and found that the food was still as fresh and delicious as it was ordered every day. So where exactly did this foul smell come from? Gu Nian looked around the room for a week, and finally turned his gaze to the open window. She walked to the window and found that the foul smell had indeed become more intense. It was also at this moment that the wind suddenly rose. The strong wind brought a lot of foul odor to my face, and as I was about to receive the baptism of that odor, I quickly made a decision and slammed the window shut. The world outside the window is raging with strong winds. Looking at the flowers, plants, and trees dancing in the strong wind in front of the hotel, listening to the howling sound of the wind, I thought of a poem. Mountain rain is coming, and the wind fills the building. The fact proves that ancient poetry does not deceive me. Gu Nian was still struggling with the crab shell when he heard the sound of splitting rain outside the window. This heavy rain that has been brewing for an unknown amount of time is raging, with raindrops as big as beans falling down. Gu Nian glanced out of the window, wiped out the seafood on the dining table, thought for a moment, took out a set of protective clothing, fully armed himself, walked to the window, and opened a small gap. Sure enough, the foul smell became even more pronounced. Even when wearing a mask, the foul smell cannot be ignored. That rain. It smells so bad. As a medical student, she is well aware that it is the foul smell produced by meat spoilage. She immediately closed the window and looked out at the heavy rain curtain, lost in thought. How could there be such a strong odor in the rainwater? Is it not rain in the sky, but canned herring juice? She took off her protective suit in the bathroom, sat on the sofa, and turned on the TV, wanting to see if there was any news about the heavy rain. In the news program being broadcasted on TV, the well-dressed female host smiled and said, "This heavy rain has solved the harm caused by the high-temperature weather. It's really a blessing from nature to Sunlight Island." Gu Nian frowned. Will this strange and foul-smelling heavy rain really be a blessing from nature to Sunlight Island? How could she always feel a sense of impending crisis until the sky darkened? The rain showed no signs of stopping and instead grew stronger. For safety reasons, I didn't order takeout for dinner. She took out the food she had previously purchased and made herself a high-end version of seafood instant noodles using instant squid, shrimp, and fish sausages. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Sunlight Island 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Sunlight Island 7. She stood in front of the window holding instant noodles, watching the heavy rain pouring down towards the low-lying area. With great blessings in her heart, she suddenly thought of a very serious problem. These smelly rainwater must be problematic. Rainwater will enter the groundwater circulation system on the island, which may have an impact on the entire water circulation system. This also means that a water resource crisis is bound to occur. Based on the current situation, the mineral water she stored in the space and the bottled water at the hotel just changed the day before yesterday are both safe. Gu Nian thought that as an ordinary person with little self-protection ability, she would definitely suffer from insomnia in the event of a crisis. I didn't expect the sound of rain outside the window to be very hypnotic. Listening to the splashing rain, she surprisingly fell asleep, still soundly asleep. She had no dreams all night, and when she opened her eyes, it was already the next morning. There are very few pedestrians walking outside. Most people choose to travel by car. Cars started a series of splashes in the heavy rain and quickly flew away. I am concerned about watching TV and accessing useful information online while continuing to learn combat and survival skills in the hotel. The heavy rain outside has been pouring for 2 days and 2 nights without any signs of weakening. The situation is as she had anticipated before. The continuous heavy rain day and night suddenly lowered the temperature on the island by more than 10 degrees. However, she is still in the hotel room and has an air conditioning system to use, so she has not yet used the clothes she purchased. As it was 10 o'clock in the evening, Gu Nian was about to turn off the TV and go to bed when suddenly it was pitch black and the TV clicked and automatically turned off. She furrowed her brow, took out a solar emergency light from the space, walked to the window, opened the curtains, and found that the hotel was surrounded by darkness within sight. She took out a telescope to observe and found that only distant places could see the scattered lights. The whole world became dark and quiet, with only the heavy rain outside still refusing to stop, making a loud noise. Perhaps it was because this dark environment would instinctively make people feel dangerous. With a slight frown, he checked the door lock of the room, thought for a moment, took out the tape, sealed the gap between the door and the door frame with tape, and blocked the door with the hotel cabinet, which finally gave him a slight sigh of relief. She couldn't watch TV anymore, so she lay in bed using her phone to check the news and indeed saw an official announcement. The heavy rain caused a malfunction in the power system on the island, resulting in a temporary power outage. At present, the power company has initiated an emergency plan and is currently undergoing repairs. The power system will recover within approximately 2 to 3 hours. In order to keep my physical and mental strength at their best at all times, although I couldn't help feeling anxious in my heart, my worries still forced me to fall asleep. The next morning, she found that the power system was still not restored. She took out the reserved wet wipes to wipe her face and opened the curtains. The heavy rain outside remained unchanged. She was about to retract her gaze when suddenly she noticed a crooked figure walking in the pouring rain. Through the rain curtain, she could vaguely tell from the person's figure that he was a man. The man's walking movements look extremely uncoordinated, not only walking crookedly, but also his body movements are very stiff, much like a patient with post-stroke sequelae exercising their body. Gu Nian pursed her lips. The current master is also not easy. Is it like this, rain or shine, for the sake of exercising? She thought this way and raised the telescope in her hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Sunlight Island 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Sunlight Island 8. She aimed the telescope in her hand at the old man who seemed to exercise without any obstacles, and observed his condition through the heavy rain curtain. The person was unaware that someone was upstairs holding a telescope to observe him, still walking unsteadily in ignorance. Gu Nian frowned. Will an old man who exercises his body walk in a low-lying puddle, wade in the water, and bravely move forward in the rain without realizing it? I always feel a bit strange. When Gu Nian had doubts in his heart, the person happened to be facing Gu Nian's side, with stiff movements and a stiff neck. Turning his head when Gu Nian barely saw the person's appearance, he couldn't help but be surprised and instinctively jumped back, away from the window. That's not what kind of disabled and determined old man who exercises his body without any obstacles, clearly a freshly baked zombie with uncoordinated walking movements. That person's dark blue face, bulging eyes covered in red blood, and the big mouth hanging with mucus, are clearly no different from the zombies seen in zombie movies. At the moment when I saw his face clearly, Gu Nian felt that the hairs behind him were about to stand up. She trembled and hid behind the curtains, suddenly thinking of her mother lying in bed, waiting for medical expenses. She gritted her teeth, forced herself to calm down, and moved step by step to the window. With trembling hands, she raised a telescope and secretly observed the situation of the zombie once again. Fortunately, the zombie's walking movements were extremely uncoordinated and the speed was also extremely slow, which prevented Gu Nian from missing the opportunity to observe. She observed carefully and found that the zombie was wearing a dark blue work uniform, with the words, Sunlight Island Power Company, printed on the back. Hush! This poor zombie is actually a worker repairing electricity. The rainwater with the stench of carrion infected this poor worker who was working outdoors in the heavy rain, turning him into a zombie. No wonder electricity has not been restored for a long time. Or rather, the power supply system here may never be restored. Gu Nian glanced at the zombie of a building that was leaning towards the roadside, and couldn't help but feel a tingling scalp. God knows how many people here have been exposed to problematic rainwater, and how many will be infected and turn into zombies. And how many healthy people will be infected by those who become zombies. Her fear of the unknown and worries about the future filled her heart with unease. Unexpectedly, the crisis that occurred in the survival game of Sunlight Island was not a natural disaster like an earthquake or tsunami, nor was it a fear of human error, but an unexpected zombie crisis. Bang bang bang. The sound of knocking on the door suddenly startled the contemplation of peeking at the zombies with a telescope. She instinctively covered her mouth and held her breath, only to hear a girl's voice outside. "Sorry, do you have water and food? It's raining so hard outside, and I'm a tourist from outside. I'm stuck in a hotel and can't get out now. I don't know what to do. Please give me some water and food." Gu Nian remained silent without answering. From a normal perspective, if you are trapped in a hotel and short of food and clothing, the first thing you should think of is to seek help from the hotel staff or relevant organizations on Sunlight Island. But the person at the door knocked on the doors of other tenants. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Sunlight Island 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Sunlight Island 9. Before her door was knocked on, she did not hear any other knocking sounds around her. This indicates that the person outside the door is likely coming towards her. That person, or rather, those people, didn't feel like stranded tourists to her, but rather like players who were staring at her and trying to snatch the survival supplies she had hoarded. Probably because she caught the attention of other players while hoarding supplies and was targeted by them. The silence of concern seemed to ignite the anger of the person standing at the door. So, the gentle knocking sound of the girl shouting at the door quickly turned into the sound of turning the door handle and pushing the door hard. Fortunately, Gu Nian had already locked the door from the inside and sealed the gap with tape, using the hotel cabinet to hold the door. "Open the door. I know you have food. Hand over the food, otherwise we won't be polite." Suddenly, a rough threat from the man sounded outside the door, causing him to reflexively rush towards the door and use his body to firmly resist the cabinet blocking the door. Bang bang bang. The sound of knocking on the door outside grew louder, and the heart of concern was pounding uncontrollably with the sound of knocking on the door. Those people smashed the door but failed, and began to curse loudly. Suddenly, there were a few disharmonious sounds of footsteps outside, as if dragging their steps. The footsteps suddenly accelerated and rushed towards the door of the room where Gu Nian was located. Accompanied by the footsteps, were the screams of terror from the 2 men and 1 woman at the door. "Ah! There's a monster here." "No. It's not a monster, it's a zombie. Run quickly." The 3 of them panicked and gave up smashing the door, trying to escape. Unfortunately, it's too late. Gu Nian dared to observe the situation outside through the door mirror. She saw a group of zombies wearing security uniforms running towards this side in a stiff and twisted posture. Although their posture was twisted, their speed was not slow at all, and they quickly surrounded the 3 people at the corner of the corridor not far away. The situation of those security zombies is even more terrifying than that of the power facility maintenance worker. Their skin was pitch black, stained with pus and dark red plasma. The skin on their faces began to ulcerate, even revealing a terrifying pitch black, drooling gums. Their throats let out beast-like growls, and they charged towards the 3 surrounded players with open teeth and claws. One of the 3 men desperately turned the door handle of the room in front of him, trying to escape into the room. Unexpectedly, the zombies behind them were incredibly powerful. They split the door in half, tugged at the man and half of the door, and competed with other zombies, quickly tearing the man to pieces. "Ah! Don't bite me, don't bite me!" The girl in the 3-person team screamed. With her slender figure, she suddenly crawled behind her companion and pushed her hand towards the zombie. Taking advantage of the opportunity for her companion to collide with the zombie, she broke out of the enclosure and rushed to the door of the room she was looking for at the fastest speed, slapping the door with a loud bang. "I know you're inside. Please, open the door and help me." Gu Nian closed his eyes and remained unmoved. Just now she saw with her own eyes that girl betrayed her teammate and pushed him towards the zombie. If she were at this time, the next person to be pushed out to feed the zombies would be her. The girl saw that Gu Yen refused to open the door and cursed loudly, "Why don't you save me? A person with a heart as hard as yours will definitely die hard." Gu Yen twitched the corner of his mouth. "A petty person like you must die easily." It seems that even God had reached a consensus with Gu Yen, and the girl was soon crushed to the ground by two zombies, and together with her two companions, it was heartbreaking. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Sunlight Island 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Sunlight Island 10 The tragedy outside clearly shows that the door of the room cannot withstand zombie attacks, and the hotel is not a safe place. Shouldn't she take advantage of the fact that there aren't many zombies outside and try to avoid those security zombies and go to a safer place? But, as an unfamiliar person, where could she go when encountering zombies that could only become fish on the chopping board? For her, where is the safe place to survive until the end of the game? The tragedy just performed made her tremble slightly, squatting on the ground and hugging herself tightly, tears swirling in her eyes. She's just an ordinary junior student. Where have you experienced such a deadly crisis? However, the thought of her bedridden mother waiting for her suddenly gave birth to the courage to persevere. She can't give up. There are still so many purchased supplies and simple weapons in her space. As long as she chooses a better position, she may not have a chance to live to the end. Gu Yen took a few sips of mineral water and forced himself to regain composure. She took out the map and travel manual she had bought before, sat at the table and studied them carefully. After more than half an hour of careful study, she chose HSBC Institute of Biology as her next destination among several places she liked. I chose this place because it was originally a biological research institute. Even if it is impossible to deal with zombies, there should be a closed area similar to a safe house to avoid the risk of occupational exposure for laboratory staff. Secondly, the HSBC Institute of Biology is located on the mountaintop and has a high terrain. In the current situation of continuous heavy rain, the area is relatively unaffected by urban waterlogging disasters. According to her analysis, the foul-smelling rainwater is likely to infect people and turn them into zombies. Once waterlogging occurs and the water level rises, it is unknown how many people will be deeply affected. Just as Gu Yen had decided to use HSBC Biological Research Institute as a new base, he heard the voice of Zero. Up to now, the host has completed 6 side quests and spent more than 80,000 yuan cumulatively. Next, please work hard to live until the game ends. Good luck to you. Gu Yen. I have been moved. Even the system is encouraging her. Thinking to myself, since I have already decided on the next stop, I need to prepare in advance. Based on the current situation analysis, delaying here for an extra minute poses a danger of 1 more minute. She quickly filled her stomach, changed into long clothes and pants, and for safety reasons, put on 2 sets of protective clothing, and also put on a layer of jungle raincoat outside the protective clothing. She put on a mask, protective glasses, and sealed any gaps that could expose her skin with waterproof tape to ensure that there was no possibility of exposure. Only then did she remove the tape that sealed the door and move the cabinet blocking the door. She didn't rush out, but instead pressed her ear to the door and listened to the outside for a while. Realizing that there was no sound outside, she carefully opened the door and observed the situation in the hallway with her cat crouched down. The corridor was filled with the stench of carrion and a strong smell of blood. The security zombies didn't know where they had gone, and the 3 players who had received boxed meals had turned into dismembered pieces scattered on the hotel carpet. On the 8th day of entering the survival game, at 9:12 a.m., Gu Yen bravely took the step to leave the hotel. End of this chapter.